live here on Get Vocal with another edition of 15 Minutes of Game with J and D. And you know what? We're going to talk about this little fun thing that we try to do a little fun stuff on Fridays with movies and entertainment stuff, but we're scrapping it. We just decided 2 minutes ago. We're doing it live on the fly. We're going to talk about the industry that Jay and I have a combined 40-something years in, and that's broadcasting, and why it is a terrible, effed up world, partly due to just journalism in general, too, and, you know, the tragedy that happened in Annapolis just yesterday.
Can I start then?
Yeah, go for it.
Can I start? Or reason number 4080, to quote a Tribe Called Quest lyric. The reason why radioism sucks because the people in charge are morons. Back, I've worked in. I'm no longer working in the business, but I worked there for 20 years in the business, and I had at least 9 program directors, and out of those 9, I came up with one. I'm going to mention her name. Her name was Kathy Brown. When I worked for WWI in Baltimore, she was the best program director I ever had. I had 8 other fucking morons who were in charge, like the dumbest people I've ever met. Tony Kornheiser once said, and I remember I was sitting in the studio and he goes, we had just had a meeting with our boss, and our boss, another fucking moron, had left the building, had left the studio, and Kornheiser goes, you know, radio is run by C students, and that is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Radio is run, and I'll give them credit for C because I've had even dumber ones than that. So C is giving them credit. But radio is run by the dumbest people ever, and what happens is they get a hand up from one of their buddies, and that's how they keep getting these fucking jobs, and it's killing the business. And number 2, they can't do what you and I do, but somehow they tell us what to do. It amazes me the people in charge are who they are. I know I just ranted for a minute, but go ahead.
No, I'll preach, brother, because I love that you said, you know, the people that don't know how to do it. And that's very evident these days with a lot of the cutbacks that have gone on in radio. A lot more program directors are back to being on air, picking up midday shifts and things like that. Oh my God, and are they awful? Now, I had a PD at a certain rock station back in Maryland that occasionally would get on air, and he was the first to admit that he hated doing it. He felt he wasn't very good at it, and it was laughable when he was on air. But that was something that I thought was baffling. I'm like, how are you, if you can't do it and don't know what the fuck you're talking about in the act of doing it, how can you tell other people how to do it? I used to get these stupid meetings where it'd be like, okay, we need to talk less. Like, wait, the station's driven by the personalities. Okay, they can tune in to 5 other stations that are playing the exact same songs we are. This place has been around for as long as it has because of its personalities. If the personalities aren't speaking, then what's the point, right? And then you expect to draw people in. Now, Jay, you did more of a talk stuff with more of your stuff with sports, and you did a lot of talk radio, which had to be even worse when you're hearing from program
directors and news directors. I had a news director. Okay, we're in Baltimore, which is, I believe, market 20-something, maybe.
Yeah, it fluctuates between like 19 and 22.
We had a news director come from Rhode Island. And this guy was supposed to tell me, who had been working in top 10, top 5 markets my whole life, how to run my show. And I just, every time he walked by me, I looked at him with disdain because there's not a goddamn thing this guy could tell me about how to do my job. And it's just, you sit in a meeting with the guy, and he does an air check, and he goes, "What were you thinking about in that last break?" What the fuck kind of question is that? It's just, they ask the dumbest questions. They literally don't know what they're listening to, and so they're going to convey that. They try to convey that to you. It's just, I'm so glad I never go back. And by the way, I'm never going back. And somebody asked me, if you could, if they let, because there's a station that's flipping, and they were like, if they gave you a job, I say, there's no way in hell I'm going back because I never want to sit in a room with a PD asking me about the last call and how we handled that call. I never want to go through that ever again.
It's crazy because you said it with, they talking about if they don't get it, then how are other people getting it? I'm like, well, because our listeners are smarter than you. And I used to get that a lot, like, you might want to dumb down the humor a bit. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, some of your stuff is a little too sophisticated. And I'm like, not according to our demographics. You know what I mean? I'm like, we're catering to around 40 educated, college educated professionals. That's a big chunk of our demo. So I said, by you telling me that these people, because you didn't get what I was talking about, the listeners must not. I'm like, that's on you, dude. If you were just telling me that you're a fucking idiot, is what you just told me. And you're the one in charge. Like, that's insane. But that's the trend. And like you said, it's the nepotism. It's this PD gets fired for impropriety or just running a station to the ground. And then he has a buddy that he used to work with in another market that says, hey, I know just the guy, because these guys know how to politic. They know how to play the game. Meanwhile, if a jock, a personality, whatever you want to call them, is looking out for themselves, takes a better gig or something, or says, hey, you know what? $10 an hour isn't going to cut it for me anymore. Then they're villainized. People think that like radio folks make a bunch of money. And it's average jocks pulling like jocks producers on average, like a $20,000-$25,000 a year business, depending on your market. And it's insane that I hate to see people I know, like, and that's especially like I worked in a union shop, which was great because the pay scale went up as the more time you put in, you got up, even if you were a part-time or full-time or whatever it was. But now living in Florida, and initially I was like, I might take a gig as just to kind of supplement some income, and I enjoyed doing it. But you're right. I sat there and I went and I met with a couple stations down here. And first of all, the pay is ridiculous. I was like, dude, I can go work at freaking Walmart as a greeter and deal with less stress. Money.
Right.
Yeah. And they're like, well, with your experience or whatever, we can probably bump you up to like 15 an hour. And I was like, cool, that's not going to support my family. And so that was one thing. The other thing is then I sat there and met with a couple of the PDs and GMs that were just, I asked them, because at this point I was like, I'm not really trying to get a gig. I just made some, kind of introduced that I was going to be in this market. Because the initial gig I was going to take got blown up because of Bubba fucking Clem, who is the biggest plague in radio.
Bubba Love Sponge.
Fuck that guy. So he basically single-handedly destroyed a whole station, which was the station I was going to take a gig with, because I liked the PD there, because he was an actual guy who knew music, who cared about music, and wanted to do radio the way it used to be done. Just good programming, have some fun with it, play good tunes, promote concerts, things like that. I was like, that's awesome. I'm all about working with this guy. And this guy was recommended to me by a couple other people that I used to work with, and said, no, dude, this guy is not your typical PD. And I had like 3 conversations with him prior to moving here. And I was like, I would definitely work for this guy. Unfortunately, Bubba the fucking Love Sponge ruined all that. So but the word was out, and I met with some other folks. I was just like, no, I kind of interviewed them. And I was like, how do you operate? How do you do this? What do you think of that? And they gave me these like bullshit answers that are like from the corporate side of things. And I was like, no, because I'm not going to work here, because you're probably going to flip your fucking station in a few months because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And I'm happy being a full-time freelancer now, and I still get offers from radio stations, and I'm like, no. I usually just say something real, and I come off being arrogant, and I'm okay with that at this point because I paid my fucking dues. But when sometimes I get approached now, and I'll be like, yeah, double that pay, and then maybe we'll talk. And they're just blown away. Like, sorry. Because that's the only way I'll put up with that bullshit anymore. You got to pay me a lot to put up with that bullshit.
I'm just not even going to, somebody will come there. I know to come. Oh, you're going to come back? Hell no. I'm going to do PR. I'm going to work for a political, I'm working for a delegate in Maryland. I'm going to do that. I'm never going back. I was thinking the other day, like, so we had this guy who was our boss, who knew everything. He'd been at the radio station for like 40 years, something ridiculous. And you know what I'm talking about. So the position of PD came up. And instead of giving it to this guy who'd been around forever and knew how to do everything in the radio station, by the way, which most PDs don't know how to do every job, they brought in Stillhole from ESPN, who one of those guys, and my buddy said, he's one of those guys who would wear ESPN jacket station. I'm like, okay, I know who you mean. And I remember like, and then Oriole, this may not seem a lot to someone, but while running an Oriole game, we would actually broadcast the Ravens draft. And if you can think about how difficult that is, it was just hard as hell. We were doing the election, and the guy from ESPN, he was king of the bells and whistles, king of the, things like that. That sounds stupid, but he thought,
that early '90s morning show nonsense.
Right, exactly.
That was cool 25 years ago.
So it's like after Trump had been elected, and then he goes, "Hey," he goes, "You guys haven't done the broadcast like this before." And I looked at him and said, "Nah, we just did Oriole games and draft at the same time. You're not that special, you fucking moron." They hire the dumbest people. A lot of pals and bells and whistles on a rejoin that was sprucing up, the way the station sounded. I think right there I knew it's time for me to leave this place, because this guy the fate of my life is in this guy's hands, and he's a fucking idiot. No, that can't happen. So that's another thing too. The fate of your hand, the fate of your job and your family are in the hands of some of the dumbest people ever. That should make you stay awake at night. That thought right there. So.
Yeah, and if we were wrong, then there wouldn't be these shakeups that are going on. Okay, because I still work with radio stations as part of my job, and you look at like a conglomerate like iHeart, and PDs, GMs, APDs are getting fired left and right because finally people are waking up and being like, you know what, the way we've been doing this for the last few years is stupid. So I'm hoping, and I know there's some companies out there like Beasley that are actually, and I think Cox to an extent are starting to redo things. Some of them are starting to retool and be like, wait a minute, we messed up. It's time to go back to some of the roots. So maybe in 10 years, it'll be awesome again. And I'm not saying there's bad, like every station's bad. There's some great stations down here I enjoy. I just don't think I could work for them.
Well, D, that was 15 minutes. 8 idea.
We could do 5 episodes on this topic and spit some truth.
I guess come back at you with some sports. Maybe not. Who knows? Take it away,
Yeah, we'll join you guys again on Tuesday. If you watch this, thank you, and maybe you learned something.